Okay, to conclude this series on what got me into comics and whatnot, I'll basically end this with um, conceptually some of the things that I got into way back in the day when I first started checking comics out. To continue with Jim Starlin, who I was talking about in my last video as it goes to art, Jim Starlin also was somebody that opened things up for me as far as conceptualization goes. This guy, in my view, was kind of ahead of his time. With the stuff he was doing with Captain Marvel, one could say he was sort of the precursor to a number of these event comics that have been coming out for the past 20 years or so. I don't know whether or not he actually did comics, ongoing comics that were crossovers per se, but I do know that with comic books like Captain Marvel, he did take the liberty of bringing in the Avengers and bringing in a number of characters unique to Captain Marvel's specific universe, so to speak, with folks like Drax the Destroyer and Gamora, Pip, and the like. And as a result, he ended up telling a bunch of these overreaching but good cosmic tales that really hadn't been touched on too much prior to him. Probably the closest being something along the lines of what Kirby would do. Now, there was also Eros, aka Star Fox, and Mentor, I think that was his name. Kind of like he's kind of like an all-father shepherd kind of character that was kind of like the new gods of Marvel type of deal with him and Eros and a few others. But anyway, Jim just really touched on things that few people even consider doing. If you look at the Infinity Gauntlet, which is something that has been taken special note as of late, potentially for an Avengers movie, that kind of really started with Warlock, because Warlock being another one of Jim Starlin's works, Warlock had the soul gem that was on his forehead, and that was one fifth of the gems that comprised the Infinity Gauntlet to begin with. Also, something that's been talked about for the Avengers is the Cosmic Cube. Now, the Cosmic Cube, while a lot of people reference the Cosmic Cube with the Red Skull and things that happened on in Captain America, that really was a thing that really started off with Thanos and Captain Marvel. And it'll be interesting for me to see whether or not in the Avengers movie, whether Captain Marvel will even get a mention or not, considering that it basically started with him. But anyway, I digress. Jim Starlin's work on Captain Marvel, his work on Warlock, and later on Dreadstar, and I think he had a series called The Weird and what have you. Jim Starlin was just one of a kind. I got to give big ups to him. Someone else who also was a little bit different was Steve Gerber. Steve's been on a number of series. I think he did a little bit with the Defenders, but most notably his work on Howard the Duck is kind of the thing that I remember him most for. And unfortunately, if you ask most people about Howard the Duck, they'll think about that debacle with the movie of the same name that was horrible. But actually, Howard the Duck, the comic book, was actually a pretty good read. I think it's a bit dated now, considering the time it came out, but I think it still, has worth. I think it still has value in today's society. It was a very satirical look at things that were going on in the world at that particular moment, and the thing that was probably most notable about Howard the Duck, regardless of how satirical and how lampoonish the themes could be in that comic, it really did exist within the mainstream Marvel Universe. Howard the Duck could run across Spider-Man, he could run across the Defenders, and has, which just made him seem all the more bizarre, considering he was in, that specific sort of pseudo-reality. And Steve Gerber just would have been someone that I would have loved to have seen works of his outside of Howard the Duck, to see just how far he would have taken things. And one person that I certainly can't leave off the list, conceptually speaking, is Jack Kirby. I've made it no secret that I've never been a fan per se of Jack Kirby's art, but I do not question his standing within the comics community, and I understand totally why he's revered as highly as he is. For me, his most influential work wasn't with Marvel. It was his most popular work, for no doubt, but his most influential work, I think, came as a result of DC and the stuff he was doing, whether it was Commandy, whether it was OMAC, whether it was the Forever People. No doubt the crown jewel over at DC under Kirby's wing would be the New Gods. And the New Gods, with Mr. Miracle and Barda, Orion, Light Ray, and a whole bunch of others. What more can you say about Jack Kirby that hasn't been said already? I know for myself that as soon as I can get situated to handle it, I will definitely get the any DC showcases featuring the New Gods, because that was just an overall mind-blowing epic, dealing with the Boom Tube and Mother Box and everybody, basically from that whole Fourth World deal. But anyway, that pretty much caps what it was that I was digging on comics as far as the mainstream goes. The only addendum that I'll add to this is Heavy Metal Magazine. Heavy Metal Magazine was something that showed me how quote unquote adult comics could be, even as a kid. You look at the works by Moebius and Richard Corbin and Droulet and Liberatore and so on and so forth. You almost can understand why some people back in the day were on acid trips and all kind of other kinds of trips. And fortunately, these comics were my drug, so it was all good for me without having to light up, shoot up, get blitzed or anything else. But anyway, anybody else has any tales they want to talk about as it relates to how they get into things initially, how they get into things artistically, or how they get into things conceptually, I'm all ears. Anyway, until next time, thank you and night out.